resources are like natural resources. They're often buried deep. You have to go looking for them. They're not just lying around on the surface. You have to create the circumstances where they show themselves. And you might imagine education would be the way that happens, but too often it's not. Every education system in the world is being reformed at the moment, and it's not enough. Reform is no use anymore, because that's simply improving a broken model. What we need is not evolution, but a revolution in education. This has to be transformed into something else.
Why do we do what we do? Do we go to school? Do we head to meetings? Do we read books in order to become the best and the brightest? In order to take home that trophy, right? Whether it's money or power or fame. Or are we focused on mastery? Do we play sports? Do we head to the office? Do we listen to podcasts in order to improve ourselves in some way, in order to create some type of understanding? These questions are key to something that I call the new smart. I've been studying the new smart, the skill of learning to learn, for years. I think we're all pretty familiar with the old smart. It's a view that dominates our cubicles, it's a view that dominates our classrooms, and it's all about innate talent. It's all about hardwired skills, and whether it's math or knitting, the old smart is something you have or you don't. Now, the old smart can actually get you pretty far. The issue is when you start to struggle. Then the old smart, they often give up.
Now, learning has been probably one of my main superpowers since I was very young, and learning how to learn is one of those like meta skills that no one ever really teaches us, but that can have like an enormous impact on our life in basically everything that we do. Teach what you are trying to learn. We often have this thing of like, oh, I'm not allowed to teach something until I become an expert at it. But there's this concept that C.S. Lewis talks about, that I talk about a lot, called the curse of knowledge, which is that when we're trying to learn something, often we don't learn best from experts. We learn best from people who are just one step in front of us along that same journey. And so the way I think of it is that I would rather learn from a guide than learn from a guru. Guide versus guru, and I would rather be a guide than try and be a guru. And certainly for me, I found that when I was going through medical school, my favorite revision sessions or lectures would be the ones that were given by medical students in the year above me, rather than those given by world-class Nobel Prize-winning professors, because those guys were like old and like really far removed from the things that I needed at the time, whereas another medical student just 1 year above me was like really, really helpful. And then when I started teaching medical students, when I started teaching guitar, when I started teaching piano and YouTube as well with my part-time YouTuber academy, I found that anytime I try and teach something, it really solidifies my own knowledge and understanding and learning of the thing itself. And so now I have a general policy that whenever I'm learning anything, I'm documenting my process while learning it. And that helps me learn better because I know that I'm possibly going to be teaching this thing a few months or years from now.
The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. The ultimate way to ensure that you actually understand all the little nitty-gritty details of a concept in your head is to explain it to someone else, or to at least pretend you're doing so. And that is the crux of the Feynman Technique. So let's get into it. It's a process of 4 steps, and the first step is to simply get out a piece of paper and write the name of the technique down at the top. And in the example I filmed here, we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem because it is simple and it won't get in the way of the actual steps we're going to go through. Step 2 is to explain the concept and to do it in simple, plain English, or French, or really whatever language you happen to speak. But the idea here is to do it in a way that's easy to understand, as if you were teaching someone else. And don't just settle with defining the concept either. Also work through examples and make sure that you're able to use the concept in practice as well. For step 3, identify any of the areas that you're shaky on after your explanation, or identify areas that you got stuck on which halted your explanation, and go back to the source material or go back to your notes or work through examples until your understanding of these sub areas is just as solid as all the other areas. And finally, step 4 is to look at your explanation and try to identify any areas where you've resorted to using technical terms or convoluted language, and then challenge yourself to break down those terms and explain them in simplified, easy to understand words. Remember, the key key here is simplicity. The act of explaining a topic as if you were teaching it to somebody who didn't have the same base assumptions and base knowledge that you have is the ultimate test of your own knowledge in that subject. And that's pretty much it. That's all there is to the Feynman technique. Now, using this technique is incredibly helpful because it, number one, helps you to quickly overview the concept and see where your knowledge is solid, but number two, it helps you to instantly pinpoint the areas where you're shaky and where you need to do extra work. And that makes this technique a great first step in reviewing a concept because it's very efficient and it helps you waste less time.